Hello viewers, a good afternoon to you all. Just a quick recap. In 2007, the United Nations Security Council did approve the African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM. Of course, you are aware of the threat that was existing at the time, you know, transnational terrorism, among others. 17 years down the road, if my math is correct, there is an idea or a transition of this same mission to hand over, you know, the military prowess and might to the people of Somalia. So is this transition timely? We shall delve into that. And also in the first segment of this show, we shall talk about the conflict in Israel, between the Israelites, the Jews and the Palestinians. Well, it's a very deep context right there. I don't think I'm the best expert to, you know, even give a preamble, but well, I have a panel that will attempt to, you know, give us a contextual analysis of that as well. Viewers, welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. I'm joined by a panel of distinguished young people that it's now my pleasure to introduce to you, and in no particular order. From the extreme left is a face that had really chucked the Youth Roundtable. He had disappeared for a while, but we're able to, you know, scoop him back and have him on the show, more so when such complex conversations come up. Lawel Muhwezi is the name. Lawel is a member of the Now generation and a student of law at Makerere University. Lawel, we are happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I am happy to be back after such a long time. I am looking forward to an interesting conversation.
All right, they say ladies first, but I'll introduce the lady last. Next to myself is Wilson Nuwandinda. Wilson is a researcher in international relations and also a strong advocate of the East African Community Federation. Wilson, what a perfect time for you to show up on the Youth Roundtable.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time. Looking forward to a powerful conversation with my fellow panelists.
Yeah, we are very happy to have you as well. The only lady on the show is Nancy Otyang. Nancy is many things. Nancy holds a master's in public policy. She's a policy analyst and many other things. So Nancy, we're happy to have you and good afternoon.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah. Well, let's just begin right away. Lawel, it's always convenient for me to begin with you.
Yes.
So just what do you know about this conflict?
So I think in my understanding, the conflict is a territorial conflict. One is there's a side that thinks that Israel is not a bona fide occupant of the area. And there is those who believe that the Jewish community, which is generally the Israel occupants, have a historical claim or deserve to have a permanent territory to stay. And I think for me, that's what the context is. But just to put it into perspective, there is a claim by Israelites that dates back to 1000 AD that they were the real occupants of that area. However, with the rule under the Roman Empire and subsequently the Ottoman Empire from the 16th century up to World War I, denied their existence, forced them out, and you had these Muslims and Arabs take up the space. So the real modern day conflict, I think, starts from the First World War, when the Ottoman Empire loses the area to the British Empire. So the British occupy that area. However, the Jews start then to fly back to the territory and start demanding for some sort of being recognized as occupants in that area. Subsequently, you also have the Second World War, where there is the Holocaust. You remember Hitler's role in pursuing and killing the Jewish people, which forces a global conversation for a need to have a permanent territory for the Jews to settle. There is a huge debate. I'm sure you've had Museveni's speech. There was, I think, the Balfour report where Uganda and Kenya were some of the areas which were being debated. as to where they should be settled. However, because of the historical claim to the land where currently Israel and Palestine sit, the resolution by the UN is that that should be the territory on which the Israel state should be occupied, should be established. In 1947, that was 1947. Indeed, the Israel state is established. However, the people, the neighboring Arab world does not recognize the legitimate establishment of Israel. And so when Britain gets out in 1947, immediately you have the First War, where there was Egypt, Lebanon, Iraq, all of them attacking Israel because they didn't want its establishment to exist. However, they lose the war against Israel, and that's when you have the so-called catastrophe. It's called the occupational Nakba. I'm sure you've heard that word from one of our analysts.
Yeah.
So they are defeated. When they are defeated, Israel gets a stronghold of its state. Then you have another, I think, conflict in 1967 when Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt. Stages forces on the Israel border to attack them. Unfortunately, Israel preempts the war, attacks Egypt, warns Lebanon from entering the war. They insist again. Israel succeeds, and that's when Israel also expands and occupies some of the land, which was legitimately Palestine land. It's called what they call the West Bank, and then the Gaza. You get. So under the 1947 arrangement, they had agreed on what percentage Israel should occupy and Palestine should occupy. You get. However, the neighbors don't agree. They stage that conflict, the war I told you, in 47 and 67. When they lose, and you need to understand the conflict, that every time Israel is attacked, it always wins and ends up taking up some of the land where the nemesis are occupying. And that's why when you look at the map from 1947 to current, you realize that Israel continues to take more land. But depends on which side of the conversation you are at. Anyone can argue that Israel is indeed seeks to take the land in the first place. So this is what has continued to happen. There was I don't know if you've heard about the Oslo codes, where there's also another the things we talk about, the two-party state, where you have Israel and Palestine sitting to agree. They agree, and then after you have these people again attack Israel, and Israel has to respond and ends up taking some of the land, etc. I think just put into perspective, in 2005, Israel agrees to leave the Gaza. When it leaves the Gaza in 2007, Hamas, which is, depending on which side you're at, for me it is a military occupation, others can say it's a terrorist entity, is voted by the Gaza people to take up leadership. The difference between Hamas and the entity which existed then was Hamas is radical in approach. It believes that the Israel state should not exist, and it has made it its core to wage war against Israel. So what you have currently is one of those many attacks on Israel. So this time, the conversation is on whether Hamas was indeed doing its usual fight against Israel's establishment, or it was informed by the need to break the current discussion between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So there is what they call the Abrahamic codes. Israel is trying to normalize. I think just to sum it up, for me it is, what does the new unfolding mean for the situation in the Middle East and the world generally? Because there has been some progressive discussion between Israel and other Arab states like Saudi Arabia. The problem with this recent attack and response is that it makes it difficult for such conversations to continue. And one would say, of course, there are those who think this is being facilitated by Iran, which is a nemesis to both Israel and Saudi Arabia. So like you say, there are those who think we should pursue a two-party state settlement, which is made difficult because once you attack a sovereign state, kill its people, they are bound to retaliate, and Israel wants to retaliate in double or even quadruple the severity, so people are going to die. You would know that one of the issues with Hamas is that it constructs its military bases and public institution buildings, like for some time its headquarters were under a hospital. So it becomes difficult for Israel to even attack the real fighters and spare the citizens if the citizens are being used as shields. So it generally makes nuanced discussion very difficult at the international level. Because Israel must protect itself, it must react. The people in Hamas believe that Israel is oppressing them, they need to fight back. So it makes diplomacy very, very difficult. So I don't know. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but for me, the problem with this is that Hamas, because of its attack on Israel, has like reversed the progress of the world in as far as realizing a diplomatic settlement is concerned.
Wow, interesting. Nancy, let me hope Lawel hasn't said it all, but I'll give you a chance to also give us what you think and what you know about the conflict.
Yeah, thank you so much. He has pretty much really said a lot in regard to the conflict. I happened to live in Lebanon for a year.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
I was doing my master's at the American University of Beirut. And the issue of Israel and Palestine is so sensitive to the point that you can't even really talk about it. Like you can't have a debate about it on campus or anywhere in the country. Like it's that sensitive. In fact, when you reach, they briefed us scholars and said that you're not supposed to say anything about it. Like just keep your, I don't know, your opinions to yourself, because it's that sensitive. Because we had quite a number of Palestinians in Lebanon. They're refugees for like forever. They've been living there for so long. And like, just out of, curiosity, I would always have like one-on-one, like what is really the issue, right? Because then, of course, after I had already read about the history of how initially the Jews were staying in the area under the Roman Empire, and then when the Ottoman Empire came in, they were pushed. And then later on, after the First World War, of course, they were trying to resettle them, and then they decided to, take them back to their original settlement. So, but like that's an opinion you cannot talk about in an Arab country, for example. So it's among the Arabs, it's so one-sided to the point that you cannot say anything about Israel. Like how it's legitimately, like Israel itself is supposed to be, it's actually for the Israelites, right? For the Jews. So you can't talk anything about it. You can't say anything about it. And in Lebanon specifically, the government, they were actually allies with Israelites, with Israel, but not openly. You get what I mean? Because the northern part of Lebanon borders Israel. So the Hamas also occupied part of northern Lebanon. So that area was very, very insecure. And we were actually told never like to go anywhere close to it. So it's quite complex. I think it's one of those geopolitical conflicts that that are so sensitive and so difficult to actually sit and have like a normal objective conversation about, because it's more about, it's also religious for the most part. The Arabs believe that the Christians do not belong in that specific area, and then so it's really that complex. And of course I think a few days ago I posted and I said, of course the only solution is just have a two-state, like Palestine independently, they gazette a certain area of the country to Palestine, and they have their own legal leadership, and they vote them, they do their own things, and then the Jews also have their own area. But of course, I feel like he just mentioned now, because I think over time Israel has actually created allies has built allies with most of the neighboring countries, like Egypt as well, even Saudi Arabia. There have been talks recently, Jordan. They've been allies. So even Lebanon, they've been like allies. There have been talks to formalize the alliance. So now with this new attack, every time something like that, they have like a certain level of progress, like the Hamas do something. Of course, there are talks that like Iran is somehow fueling it in a way, because of course they are a bit radical. So it makes it difficult. Of course, for me the best thing that could happen is just to have these two states live independently. Because just like for them to coexist, I don't think it's possible. Culturally, religiously, they're just too different, and both of them are just too proud to, to concede. You get, and just allow for peace to prevail. So, of course, with this new attack, I'm not so sure that's something that is going to be realized anytime soon.
So just to follow up with you is that because this topic is very new to me. I have not done research on it, but I'm happy that you two and him have some knowledge on this.
Yeah.
So the question for me is, how many Palestinians are living in Israel? Okay, what's the population? Do we know it? The population of Palestinians.
Of Palestinians.
Yes, Palestinians.
I think I could look that up, but what I know is
because
that
why
the Jews
I'm
are a
asking
bit more.
is that I saw the map and I saw the territory being occupied by Gaza. Is that the only? I'm sorry, occupied by Hamas.
Yeah.
Is that the only territory that is allocated to the Palestinians? No.
There's
They-
Gaza's here,
they
it's
are-
a small
yes.
place. There's a West Bank, which is the
West
bigger.
Bank. Oh, okay. Clarity gotten. So, Wilson, I had to move to you. Still, your own understanding of this conflict.
Thank you so much. I think my brother has said it all. The history of the conflict. It dates back, as I said, in 1948 when the Palestinians were first displaced. So from then, in 1967, that 6-day war that was there, as I said. I think that is the history of it. I want to repeat it. We can go now to the now question. What we think. As they have said, I want to fully agree with them. Their diplomacy now cannot work for Israel and Palestine. It absolutely cannot work. Because they are different, like 100% different, religiously, culturally, and they are extremists in everything. Let it be religion. I think this is not a question of geography, it is political and religious. So there is no way they can go to table to arbitrate or even mediate and reconcile. That cannot happen. We have seen, for example, you saw USA siding with now Israel, yeah?
Yes.
And then now the BRICS and Russia, they are kind of supporting Palestine. So it is becoming a global, like the two
Russia,
factions, Russia, USA. So there's no way they can come to table and because in the first place, Palestine has what it takes to be a state. They believe in their legitimate leadership that is there, the Hamas. Even the other ones believe that they are the rightful owners of whatever they think is theirs. So I think what should be done to let Palestine live peacefully like a state, it has all what it takes to be a state. It has the population, it has the border, it has everything. So that is what can end this conflict. But diplomatically, going on table and Israel wants to dominate, be the hegemon of which Palestine cannot allow. And they cannot allow, and they have shown it that they can never allow that. Be it power, they have their military. Because I think Israel was, the death rate, as you're asking, I think now it's close to 14,000. And they cannot just let go like that. Because the Israel claim that the Hamas have their hostages, 199. The time I last checked, Israel has blocked water and electricity to Gaza. So they are trying to suffocate them, killing people, which is not called for in the international system as far as diplomacy is concerned. So the only way to go is to let Palestine live peacefully as a state and Israel live as a state.
Yeah, sure, but I wanted to follow up with Wilson. Wilson, the Montevideo Convention does tell us that for a state to become a state, there are 4 aspects that it must meet. It must have a defined population, it must have a territory, it must have capacity to enter into agreements with other states, but also it must be able to have recognition. But so would the Palestinians be seceding away from the Greater Israel? If so, then do you think that Israel would consent to that secession? Because for as long as the mainland that is going to lose the territory and the people does not consent to your secession, then you find yourself in the question of Somaliland, where the mainland Somalia has refused to consent to the secession of Somaliland. So how, Lawel, I see you disagreeing.
What I'm disagreeing with is the analogy. Because it is not that anyone disputes the statehood of Palestine. Palestine has a leadership, it has ambassadors and all these things. The conflict is on controlling particular parts, particular territories.
Okay.
I don't know if you're getting it, including Gaza. You talked about this, what they call Temple of Mount, the holy ground, where there is this whole religious attachment, the Aqsa Mosque, and other holy grounds for the Jewish people and Christians. Who controls what is the major conflict.
Point of conflict.
But also, I think you want to say that also the Arabic, the denial of Israel's legitimate presence in that territory. So the conflict is not on whether Palestine should be a state or not. The conflict is on resolving who controls, who occupies this, who is supposed to be here. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, Nancy, I'll give you some time.
But I also think it's not just about letting Palestine be an independent state. It's about Palestine accepting that, Israel can also take up a certain part, and then, Palestine can also. Because at the end of the day, the main issue is that the Arabs do not want to accept that the Israelites actually legitimately belong to that area. So, like, at the end of the day, if they don't accept, they're going to keep attacking. And Israel is going to counter the attacks. And of course, Israel right now is a bit more powerful. So you can imagine, of course, the extent of the attacks is going to be a bit more than the Hamas can handle. Yes.
So, okay, Wilson, how about those who are describing the Hamas as a rebel outfit? Like, they're trying to demonize them and trying to make their cause not appear a legitimate one. But we also know that it is a common tactic by anyone who wants to oppress your views, that they will try to character assassinate you, call you a terrorist, call you, so that your cause becomes illegitimate. So I don't know, do you see Hamas eventually losing legitimacy, more so from the international community?
So it will be very hard. Like I have said, it is not a question of Palestine being a state or what, but then recognition is in the way. The Hamas don't want to recognize Israel as their legitimate leadership, that it actually exists. So that is where the problem is. And now, on the ownership of the specific part, that one I think they will never allow. Like you've asked, the Hamas, I don't think I would see Hamas winning this war. They will not.
Of course not.
Of course not. That is impossible. But then they will continue suffocating them. You see, for the Hamas, being, as they call them, jihadists, I don't know whether it's also character assassination or what, but they are fully committed to whatever it takes, whether it is losing lives. So that one will keep on prolonging the war. It will never end, because they will never cease. And for Israel, it is like, of course, militarily, financially, everything, they are more superior than the other thing. So now that is when I actually think that maybe diplomacy now can come in now. But then these ones are not ready to bow down to diplomacy like we have seen. Diplomacy does not work for Palestinians and the Hamas. So this war...
So just for clarity, among the 130-something countries that form the United Nations, Israel is an independent state, right?
Yeah.
And so is Palestine.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Lawel, among the countries that form the United Nations, is Israel one of them? They are two independent, right?
Yes.
Palestine is
think
a
that-
country of its
but-
own. Israel is a country of its own.
Me and you,
And they both have
me
a
and
vote
you-
in the UN General Assembly.
me
Yes.
and you know that membership in the UN
Mm.
is not does not equate
Mm.
to being a country. That you become a country first and then subscribe to the UN. What I know for sure is that there have been questions on the UN recognizing the legitimacy of the Palestine state. But as to whether Israel is a country or not, Palestine is recognized as a sovereign country or not, that's not in question.
Recognized by who
Yeah.
then?
You talked about the Montevideo
Montevideo
criteria.
Convention,
Yeah, it
yes.
has, like you said, it has
Being a state, you
ambassadors,
have to be
it has
recognized by other
embassies,
states
it
as a
has
state.
permanent territory, it has a permanent population. Like no one is questioning whether Palestine
That
is
one qualifies
state
it
or
to
not.
be an independent state.
Yeah.
I think as of 2019, it was
Because-
recognized by the
because
UN.
Why I'm asking is that if there are already two independent states, then why are we proposing the two-state solution again? If already there are two states
I
independent,
think we are
why are
generalized,
we
but
proposing the two-state solution as the solution? I don't know. I am really conflicted on
paper,
that.
I think yes, they're two different states. But in terms of whether the two states agree that they should exist, now that's the question,
That's the question.
right?
The two states
The
mean
two
that
states
the
do
two
not
states
accept
sit
that.
and agree
Exactly.
on how to resolve those conflicts.
Yes, because Palestine doesn't agree that Israel should exist. Israel doesn't accept that Palestine should exist. So it's like that.
But then in the international system, we recognize them as two independent states.
The two states
Okay,
just
but they are not
means
free.
that these two, even if it is Uganda and Rwanda, that you sit and agree and you find a solution of how to coexist, as opposed to having everyone else.
Everyone
involved.
else,
Yeah.
yes.
Interesting. Nancy, he mentioned something about, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the media, and he was, taking sides. He was saying that he stands with Palestine in this case. So is this conflict going to become another opportunity for the global powers? Because, they say that it is convenient for the global powers to choose a field where to demonstrate who is who.
That's right.
When the West and the East are fighting, none of these conflicts will be in the territory of USA or of Russia. It is convenient for them to choose a playing field elsewhere. So do you think that this conflict is going to become another playing field for the West versus the East?
It has always been like that. It has always been like that, because we've always known that the US is always an ally, has always been an ally of Israel, and Russia has always been an ally of Palestine. So it's of course it's the same as the Ukraine question, right? It's the same thing, basically, and that's how it's going to go.
Wilson, it's you who mentioned Ramaphosa speaking for Putin.
Of course, when I saw that clip, automatically I realized this is not just Ramaphosa speaking. It is Putin and the BRICS. So, of course, it is, like she has said, it has always been like that. We shall never see a war between two countries where Russia and USA come to side with one specific country. So they use it as an opportunity, actually, to fight themselves indirectly.
To show their power.
To show their power. Who is more powerful. Of course, as the Hamas, like USA is supporting Israel, Russia is also backing the Palestinians. Funding them, giving them military. So, in fact, leaving around the diplomatic relations, like reviving or arbitrating the two countries, even if they were to go the diplomatic way, who would we involve as the arbitrator in this case? Because we would be now eyeing USA.
There's no neutral party.
There's no neutral party, because in diplomacy, we say arbitration, there has to be an arbitrator. An arbitrator has to be neutral.
Yeah.
We have not seen the neutral power in this case. USA
true.
is 100% siding with Israel. Russia, so now, who is to arbitrate? So I think that is also a crisis we have.
China can you China to arbitrate?
Should be the UK maybe.
So of course you see, like it has been, we always see USA and Russia, the hegemonies. But before actually we reduce it to Palestine and Israel, I think we should have these superpowers, the so-called superpowers,
Yeah.
also come and side for peace and what is right.
That's true.
Yeah, in this case, because I'm pretty sure that if Putin sits with Biden and agree to solve this conflict, it will not even take a fortnight.
It wouldn't.
I think it will.
It
That
wouldn't.
is so complex.
It is complex, but then what makes it more complex is even these supporters. Because now, if they come together and say, we are going to mediate this conflict, I'm pretty sure it can be done. Because now USA will come, it doesn't want to recognize Palestine, it is supporting Israel. Then now Russia is coming, so they are the superpower. So now it leaves the conflict hanging and prolongs it the more.
I think
Isn't this
for
where the
me-
African Union,
Eh?
the United Nations rather, should be able to come in handy and say that we are going to bring these two parties together, or is the UN also another toothless dog?
Failed.
But I don't know. The nature of the Hamas and even most of these Israel jihadist entities is very difficult.
That's true.
And it's not true that the superpowers or the UN has not been.
They haven't.
And you can say there's been relative peace for some time. The problem is that the ideological orientation of these entities is tied to their the foundation of the religious beliefs, that it is very difficult for you to even mediate who should occupy this territory or not. You get? And so if Israel is saying this part of Jerusalem belongs to us, there's no way the Hamas is going to be convinced or even to vacate that area. The issue is so complex. It is to the extent that they believe that Israel should not exist in the first place.
As a state.
Yes.
As a state.
Extreme, but
the conversation becomes
illegal entity.
very, very difficult. I don't know if you're getting
Yes.
it. So for me, I don't think it is a matter of these two. I think that whole conflict is so difficult, even beyond the idea that China or US have power. It's so difficult to resolve.
You see, why I was bringing China, this USA, Russia, I disagree with that mediation cannot work. Mediation can work. But then, why I say the UN has failed, specifically the UN Security Council. Now, what are we going to mediate when actually we have states, the members of the United Nations already siding with people that are fighting? They are not trying to bring to create any harmony together, but they are fueling the war. They are fueling the war in
a way. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, in a way, I believe that, of course, the superpowers have contributed to the war to a certain extent, right? But for the most part, like he said, this is really complex. I've been in the Middle East, and like aspects of religion are so sacred, right? I think the most effective approach could be to I don't know, to have a religious, I don't know, maybe conference or mediate. I don't know if they can bring the Christians and then the Muslim councils to talk about these things, or maybe also involve Iran, because I know that for the most part, Iran sides with most of these groups. Even in Lebanon, it's the Hezbollah.
Yeah.
So it's so complex to the point that the international community may do, because they've signed peace agreements. They've recognized Palestine as an independent state, but that hasn't even worked. So it still goes back to the ground, to the religious beliefs and ideology.
Just for context, I don't think that when there comes a standoff between Israel and Palestine, the US will already side with Israel because of Israel is the only democracy in that part. The history, you have a huge Jewish community in the US as well. But I think the US, before this attack, has also been doing its part to make sure there is peace. One with Iran, and there's one of the internal discussions that are going to affect Biden is its US policy with Iran, and before the conflict, I think a few days ago, they had approved $6 billion to go to Iran as part of the agreed. Also, the Hamas has been receiving aid from the US, which is meant for, I think, the development of the area. One of the challenges actually is that as opposed to investing this money into the population, they use it to fund, to capacitate themselves militarily to fight against the Iran. So I don't think that other countries, I think that there is goodwill
to fight against the
Israel's capacity.
Yes. Yeah.
And like she's saying, Iran is the most complex nation in all of this, because if it's very opposed to Saudi Arabia, and therefore it can always use the Hamas to strain the relationship between Israel and Saudi and other Muslim countries. Like you said, Hezbollah and all this. I think it's complex, but so it's that Hamas does, as an entity, does not exist as a diplomatic entity which has the general goodwill to negotiate. If you look at the founding documents of Hamas, they believe that Israel should not exist in the first place. They are okay, like she has said, with always launching attacks. People can always be sacrificed because, like you've seen, it's the people that are dying. So these guys hide behind public infrastructure, people are bombed. Of course, the Palestinian conflict gets sympathy from the global world because the people in Gaza are being killed. The problem is the nature of the outfit. It makes discussion, diplomacy very, very difficult.
Okay, but is their cause a legitimate one?
Depending on which
Leave
side
alone their radical approach, but
example,
is their cause
me,
legitimate?
Depending on where you're standing, I would understand those who believe that Israel should not exist because they say they were displaced. For the Israel state to exist, they had to displace those who occupied the area in 1947, 1948. That's a whole different discussion. But like she said, Israel's presence is a modern day reality. The state has already been established. You can't wish it away. Israel understood that for it to exist, it must build superior military capacity. It built it, it is hard to displace it. The only solution is for us to recognize that Israel exists and we can't wish it away. How do we coexist with it? How do we deal with it?
You think the war is coming late?
Very
Would have come way back.
The wars have been
The
coming.
wars have always been coming and going endlessly.
Guys, I don't know. Let's just talk about the United Nations for a second, because I think Article 7 of the UN Charter gives the Security Council powers to intervene in circumstances where there's a threat to global peace and security. I have failed to understand how the UN operates. Yes, on paper it is clear, but in how it operates, it's hard to understand, because in this matter, the UN should be able to intervene and decisively. So, do you think they are dragging their feet with how they're handling or with how they've handled this issue? Do you think they have allowed? Because up to now, I haven't seen a statement from the UN. Is it there?
Yeah, they have.
It is.
They address press conferences. They condemn the killing of.
Shouldn't they be doing more than
We are
just
also
press
condemning,
conferences?
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, I mean, how different
They have the capacity
are
to do a
they
bit
from
more.
us?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just Nancy, the UN, is it just some outfit that is a backing dog, or?
I think not only, I think what I can say about the UN is that for the most part, most of what they're supposed to do is mostly on paper. Practically, I feel like they've not really been doing enough. Let's talk about the Ukraine question. For some time, I think that the war in Ukraine was going on and the UN did not take aside for some time also. And then later on, of course, they keep giving statements, they keep talking, we condemn. But when it comes to, because they have the capacity to actually go and intervene and probably end the war. Maybe signing something, or because that's what they always do. They always sign some agreement or something. They have talks, and briefly for some time the war goes, and then again they are the attacks keep coming. So I think that for the most part, the UN has really let us down on matters to do with international security. Where they're supposed to intervene, they always drag their feet. So I do not know who controls the UN. Like, was it supposed to be a neutral, objective entity that is supposed to, support countries and intervene in matters like these ones? And then sometimes we don't see them doing as much as they should be doing. And I think it's the case with Israel and Palestine as well. So I do not know who is controlling the UN. I don't know why they do not respond when they are supposed to respond, which I think they should, of course, be responding.
Sure. Yeah, good context. Wilson, does the doctrine of sovereignty, that states are sovereign and that they should be left to handle their internal matters in a matter that they deem fit, does the UN find itself one leg saying that, okay, these are sovereign states and we should allow them to exhaust their internal mechanisms before we can intervene? So do you think they find themselves between a rock and a hard place, between sovereignty of these states, but also you have the UN Charter that gives you all these powers to try and, so I don't know, how do you explain their action or lack of it?
Yeah, so of course, UN intervention is legitimate at this point because the war has escalated. It is now beyond the two countries. It is becoming a global question, and this is where the UN comes in. And like she has said, the UN has not only let us down, but it has failed, if I can say. Because, literally, we are here, like we were saying, we are also condemning the war. Just the poor us. Then now the UN coming on now, going into the media, just also condemning these documents that I see on social media. No, this is not what we expect from the UN. Like, seriously. She was asking that she doesn't know who controls the UN. But now the UN, I think, if my man can treat me, I think it is the USA that funds more the United Nations.
Their headquarters are in Washington or New York?
Okay.
Where?
Makes sense.
Washington or New York? One of those two cities. But anyway.
The USA, it injects in like the most money. And then now we have seen the USA siding with Israel. So now what do we expect from the UN?
But how about other members who form the UN Security Council? The G7? Are they 7 or 5? They're 7, right?
Yeah.
France.
Yeah, the permanent.
Yes.
The permanent are 5.
Yeah, so those states can't they? Because, I think if France came out and said, but no, this isn't right, can they influence decisions in the UN Security Council too?
You relate with ESC. You relate with most of these entities. I think they are as good as a secretariat. The most important decisions are taken by heads of states or states. So I don't know, people, like, the UN is not independent, it's not like a world of its own. It is a composition
That's true.
Of member
countries,
states. Yes.
of states. And like you said, you have all these countries taking sides. So which UN is going to act what? The best they can do is provide an environment for discussion, for diplomacy, provide aid to maybe the people who are suffering from the war, and those sorts of things. Unless there is a decisive position of who is wrong, or who should, or maybe if it's an African country who all the global powers don't care about, it is highly unlikely that you'll have UN intervene beyond the diplomacy. Because UN doesn't act as a body, it acts as the US, as Russia, as China, as France.
But hold up, Lawel. We are yet to discuss Somalia. We have seen the UN take military decisions or sanction military decisions in some situations.
Yes.
Somalia is one of them.
It's not analogous to this conflict. This conflict is an interstate, where you have countries on one side and on the other side. You don't have a big power or any power that I know that is backing Al-Shabaab in Somalia. I don't know if you get it. Israel can only intervene militarily if it is like a firm, uniform decision by the powers that be. Yeah.
Well,
for now, it's just a secretariat.
Interesting. So we need to give our parting shots on this particular matter. What do you think is the solution? how best can this conflict be put to bed? I'll begin with Nancy, Wilson, then end with Lawel as we take a short break.
Yeah, for me, I believe that the most effective way to go about it is to go religious, because the history to this whole thing is the fact that the Arabs, or rather the Muslims, do not want to accept the fact that the Israelites, who are Christians, should also occupy part of their land, or rather their land. They believe belongs to them. So I think it should be religious. They should have more religious conversation between the two religions of Christianity and Islam, and then of course involve Iran. I always believe that somehow most of the instability in the Middle East somehow it goes back to Iran in one way or the other. So I think Iran should really be involved in most of these talks. And of course, it's about accepting that the two states should coexist as neighbors, although independently. So if that can be achieved, if the Hamas can accept that they can stay as an independent state of Palestine and neighbor Israel, then that would be the end of everything. But if we have the Hamas always, every other time they realize that, okay, now things are becoming a bit stable, they go and scratch. And then, of course, the other party is going to intervene massively. And so what do you expect? The world is going to pity the small Palestine, small Hamas or something like that. So this whole, the Hamas and Iran and all these other parties have to be, they have to have a more religious diplomatic talk. And then if the talks can actually yield a more fruitful change in mindset and all these things, then we will finally have peace in Palestine and Israel.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wilson.
So the solution to this, first of all, there should be an immediate ceasefire, because we should not forget that people are dying.
That's true.
Property is being destroyed, and this will have a great impact on the economy. People are dying seriously at the high rate. So whatever they are doing, they should at least first put a heart to Israel. Actually, Israel is constructing settlements in the West Bank, which is also fueling the Palestinians on reversing their weapons. So there should be heart on Israel building settlements in the West Bank, and then immediate ceasefire. Then, of course, international community should come in, and like she has said, the war is kind of religious. So religious factions should be brought to table and formulate a decision, and then to see how these two countries can coexist, which will be very difficult to exist, but then mediation is the way to go. I believe in mediation, and it can be done. That is the only. But for a meantime, there should be a ceasefire, because we should not forget that people are dying, and the more people die, the more complex it becomes. So an immediate ceasefire should be the immediate solution to this. And then, as mediation processes go on.
I want to associate with her submission. It's going to be easy for all of us to sympathize with Israel, with Palestine, because the amount of destruction and lives being
and the
lost
violence is massive.
Is something we all connect with. But I think at the end of the day, all of us, for some who have followed the conflict, know how Israel always reacts to any attack. They're always severe and brutal. The Hamas knowingly did worse. It's the worst attack on Israel since the Holocaust. Killed people, maimed people, and all that. Anyone who watched that knew that something worse was going to happen to the Gaza. The Hamas deliberately did it, knowing the repercussions, all in the name of breaking the talks between Iran and Israel and Saudi Arabia, because it was being left out of discussion, but also Iran loses from that talk. So what happened was that it was a trade-off. They sacrificed the lives of people for the interests of themselves and Iran. And so for me, I think that even if people say this amounts to apathy, this amounts to resistance, violence is only justified if it's going to bring a better result. All of us know that Israel won't be defeated. It's the people that are dying. Hamas knowingly sacrifices these people. And for me, whereas we are going to sympathize with the people, no people should lose their lives. But I think for now, I think we need to condemn Hamas, do away with it. And like I already said, it makes diplomacy, which is the better approach. It makes it difficult to exist because of their jihadist stance. Yeah.
Interesting. We are due for a short commercial break. And to the viewers, well, it's a very complex conversation, as you can already see and feel it. But, well, that's our opinion. And you, of course, you have the chance to give us your opinion on the comment section. But for now, let's take a short commercial break and see you after.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Hello viewers, we'll be back from that short commercial break. Well, that was it for Israel-Palestine. We now shift gears to look at Somalia. Like I had mentioned earlier on, you know that in 2007, the UN Security Council did sanction the African Union peacekeeping mission to, take presence in Somalia. And of course, the countries were Djibouti, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and about 5-6 countries were part of that African Union sanctioned peacekeeping mission. Well, so many years down the road, there is an overwhelming feeling from the people of Somalia that they can now take care of their affairs. And therefore, there's a transition mission that this group needs to take leave and then, the people take charge of their affairs. Well, I don't know. Is it timely? Is it what has been long overdue? We shall talk about that. And let me begin with Wilson. Wilson, you're the EAC advocate here. Somalia is a potential EAC member. But as we speak about the transition mission in Somalia, let's just analyze that conflict and how the departure of African Union affects the situation there.
Thank you. First of all, I think Somalia is not ready to join the EAC right now. Because in the first place, the EAC is also not ready to receive any other new member, as the situation is now.
Why?
Why I say the EAC is not ready?
Because if we have taken in South Sudan, we have taken in the other Congo.
What was the impact of South Sudan joining the EAC?
No, because when you say Somalia is not ready, why? Is it because of the conflict that is
because of the conflict.
That is there?
Because of the conflict first, then because of the East African community itself. Because dating back on the formation of EAC, when we see the aims and objectives, I don't think we have achieved quite many, even when we were 3, 5, 7. We have not. The only thing we have achieved, we have a national anthem. And
A passport, maybe.
the passport,
National
maybe.
ID.
And the free trade area, it is also 50-50. But we have not achieved what we really want, and this is what we are advocating for. Because the region would be seriously a better place if these countries are integrated. That would be a topic for another day. Now, for ATMIS, first of all, in Somalia, we saw AMISOM. I think AMISOM joined in 2002, right? 2007. Yes, 2007. And then it is now later becoming ATMIS because AMISOM failed. If we can go
It depends on where you're seated.
no, I'm not being extreme in this. Yes, of course it has helped on the containing the war in Somalia, but then on the other side it is also going the economic way and political way, rather than solving the conflict for the sake of the peace of the Somalis. It is not being there because even here the UPDF that is sent in Somalia, it is not even sent on merit.
Oh,
Come again?
Yes, this has been there. The UPD, you see, the countries, there is Djibouti, there is water. So now I'm speaking for Uganda. This UPDF that is going to ATMIS, it is not sent on merit. Like maybe we are sending able-bodied men
Able.
to go and fight. It is more of the economics
that's true.
because they also everyone is fighting to go to Somalia, not because for the sake of keeping peace, but because of the money.
'Cause of-
Here you find you are earning $100 a month. You go to Somalia and you are earning $1,000. That is why we are seeing many people fighting to go to Somalia, not actually to keep peace. This is what is prolonging the war. Yes, because now the international community is giving donations, those donations, salaries to the and the maintenance. This is what we are all eyeing. If we are to speak the truth, we are not in Somalia as ATMIS to contain peace there and promote peace. No, it is the economic way. I'm telling you about Uganda. Sending these people, they are not sending them to go and fight. These people are fighting to go to Somalia to earn a living. So,
No, but I don't know then how to explain people like the late Paul Lokech. I mean, who were renowned combatants, who pacified Mogadishu. I don't know, like, are you being unfair to in
No,
your
I'm not being
evaluation?
unfair. I'm not saying that 100% it is wrong or what, but I'm just spotting out the loopholes in this. Of course, in the period of Rocket, may he so rest in peace. He actually tried and maybe contained peace, whatever he did. But then now we are looking at the table of Somalia, like the Somalian. What do they want? The war is running for almost 2 decades or more. And what we want to see is the end point, the peace. So automatically we are fighting for peace, which ATMIS has totally failed to deliver. If we go back, this war in Somalia can be solved by Somalia and its people. Somalia is in the best place to solve its war, not ATMIS. Because at ATMIS, I don't want to run extreme, but we have seen what ATMIS has the African Union in the first place, because I'm a person who doesn't believe in African Union in the first place. It has not it has not played the deliberate role it is supposed to play for the ATMIS. It is running political. People are going there, not containing it. All in all, between the lines, I can say the ATMIS, because it was given a mandate up to 2024. So when their mandate elapses, ATMIS should leave Somalia and leave the issues of Somalia to the Somali people. And I'm pretty sure they will solve themselves and they will handle because they know what hurts them most, not ATMIS.
Nancy, the conflict again in Somalia, who is and this has a great implication on our geopolitics as the East African region.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what do you make of this transition mission? Is it timely? Does Somalia still need military support? I don't know. What is your own thinking?
Thank you. For me, when I hear about Somalia, the first thing that, and of course the intervention, the mission that was sent to Somalia to support, to supplement, I always ask myself, so did the Somalis really need us? Did they need an external presence in the region? Or maybe we could have just supported them in terms of, giving them resources that they needed to counter the war. Did we really need to take our soldiers there to intervene, right? Because as we know that also our presence, external presence of our soldiers in Somalia, as in a way also escalated the war. It has also prompted the Al-Shabaab, for example, to attack the countries that have sent their soldiers there. We saw it in Kenya. We also saw it in Uganda, right? At some point, we saw the 2010 World Cup attack. So again, that's why I keep asking myself, so was it really necessary for us to, like, wasn't there any other way we could have supported Somalia without necessarily having to take our soldiers there?
What difference does it make?
I feel like
Whether
it
you
makes
go
a bit
there
of a difference.
or you support
Yeah.
from this side, I don't know. Support
Anonymously,
is support.
maybe we could have, sent them resources and all this.
No, but shouldn't we be brave about condemning the issues that affect the core of human existence?
That's why I'm saying.
Why should we
like
hide
condoning?
behind
But
curtains and saying,
sometimes
okay,
when you
should confront the issue.
openly come out to support certain things, it probably makes things worse. So we need to also be sure of how we want to react to certain things. Right? Like for the case of Somalia, for example, the Al-Shabaab specifically have gone on attacking people who have openly, supported Somalia in this case. So for me, that's what I always think about. So was it really necessary for us? And then if we went there for the last, I don't know how many years, what have we achieved? Have we helped Somalia stabilize as a country? Right? Because us going there to counterattack the Al-Shabaab and all these things, wasn't there any other approaches that we could have maybe supported, maybe a bit of diplomacy here and there, talks here and there with the Al-Shabaab? So all these questions keep coming up. And for me, honestly speaking, I feel like, well, in as much as maybe the mission has tried its level best to counter the war and all this, I feel like the impact is not that significant. It's not something we can say if the soldiers left Somalia right now, it would like Somalia would probably get worse or something like that. I feel like the impact is not that significant to the point that, if we left, everything would just collapse.
Yeah.
You get? So I think we should give this, we can empower them, we can, somehow find a way, but I think we should maybe give the Somalis a chance to deal, because this conflict is mostly internal.
Yeah.
So I feel like bringing an external party to the whole picture as in a way also contributed to the escalation in the whole conflict.
Okay, let me hear from Lawel.
For me, what I keep asking myself, especially from him, is when they say we should leave it to the people of Somalia. We should leave it to them to do what? Because what you have is that you have the Somali state fighting the Al-Shabaab. What you need when you're under attack, unless you have superior military capacity, is external help from people who can capacitate you to deal with that military threat you're facing. Like you said with Lokesh, Uganda and the other AMISOM mission had to fight to save Mogadishu and to reduce the area that was occupied by the Al-Shabaab. Continuously, I think that the Somalia state has garnered capacity. The question that needs to be answered is whether they have built enough capacity to sustain themselves, and therefore AMISOM should be away. I don't think the conversation should be on whether Somalia needed or needs us or not. I think there was necessity, and I think that if you left, because every time we analyze an intervention and say it has done good or bad, we need to also analyze what would have been the alternative. The alternative would have been let Al-Shabaab overwhelm the weak Somalia forces. Then it takes over government, and you have a closer state occupied by the Al-Shabaab. And I don't know what that would mean for the entire East African region, right? So I think for me, did we have to intervene or not? I think we should have. So, but then now, who determines if the internal state, the state of Somalia, has built capacity or not? I don't know. Personally, I don't know. But what I have seen was a letter from Somalia asking the UN, I think it was the UN, and the US to extend its aid, I think, for extra period of time, and that they think that is when they will have built enough capacity. So my question is, even if the UPDF was corrupt. The question is, who is asking for this support? I think the Somalia state is asking for an extended period of the ATMIS. For me, as someone who is not in there, I would want to believe that they understand their capacity most. You saw what happened with Afghanistan. So you also need to be careful when you're getting out. But yes, I agree with everyone who is saying we can't stay in Somalia forever. And I think,
Afghanistan, what exactly?
What happened in Afghanistan is the US
The
withdrew
Taliban?
and the Taliban overwhelmed the state because it hadn't built enough capacity to withstand the Taliban. So you also don't want to risk the same in Somalia.
But with Afghanistan, the Taliban were in power before the
they were in
USA
power,
intervened and overthrew them. Yes, yes, they were pushed out. Then they came back.
Is this. When they were pushed out,
they
were fought, deconstructed, pushed out of Afghanistan.
Yes.
What the US embarked on was building there was a new government, was building their capacity to fight on their own to resist the return of the Taliban. Unfortunately, that capacity had not been realized. When they pulled out, the Taliban overwhelmed the infrastructure that the US had building capacity of the Afghanistan people to handle their issues. You get, so you also.
But anyway, that's anyway.
The question is not whether Afghanistan. The question is on capacitating internal security capacity to be able to withstand that threat. And that's what ATMIS is doing: training, building capacity of the Somali state to sustain on its own. And I think that's the faith of the transition. These guys are saying they want more time. I don't know if but it's not a lot of time. Let us give it to them and get out. Then there is the idea that there's a difference between individual actors and the state mission. The Uganda might be interested in continuing to help with ATMIS. Are there individuals within the UPDF that are, I don't want to use the word lumpen, that are taking advantage to recruit their relatives, incompetent people to make sure they get money because it's well paying? I think they can be there, but I don't think it should be used to say that as the mission itself, it seeks to capacitate the corrupt. Yeah. And the only reason I am saying we should be there is because I have seen the Somalia government saying they need an extension. It becomes difficult for me to say that they don't need it.
If it comes from them, I think it's okay.
But there is still time. They're asking for 4 months actually because they're supposed to leave by 2024. By the end of 2024.
I think one of the things I wanted to ask, people will say the ATMIS has extended the war. How? Is it capacitating the Al-Shabaab? Because the Al-Shabaab still exists. The only solution is Somalia having internal capacity to fight back, military capacity. And to fight back the
But can
Al-Shabaab.
we capacitate them without us being there? That's
also,
for me my question.
No, it's hard. They need to be trained. And how many countries are willing to commit their
train them
forces?
from an external, like
No, they can't. It's because you have to protect what we are doing. If you look at the armed forces, they protect the airport, the state house, parliament, which requires some level of sophistication. So you have to continue. And it's a progressive thing.
Yeah, but also colleagues, I want to ask a question. Is the only security dilemma that Somalia is facing the Al-Shabaab? Or there are actually underlying issues? Because if you guys recall how Siad Barre came to power and how he was overthrown and all those things, and how Somalia has had so many security issues that are intertwined with its the politics of the clans and etc. Are we being a bit simplistic to only look at it from the Al-Shabaab point of view, and that there could be other very pertinent underlying insecurity factors that are aiding all this? Because I think
those can
Al-Shabaab
be dealt
only
with after Al-Shabaab has
cannot-
been dealt with.
Sorry?
Those can be dealt with after Al-Shabaab has been contained. So if you have internal conflicts in Uganda, but you have ADF, you have to fight ADF
Because-
and then solve your internal challenges.
Because ask yourself, how is Al-Shabaab able to survive for all this while? They have support from the community. I don't think you can survive independently if you don't have support from certain functions of the
Are the
community.
citizens done supplying them with weapons?
What?
Of
Who is
course,
supplying the Al-Shabaab with
not
weapons?
the weapons, but
Just tell us
Must
the
be
groups have
something to do with
capacity.
Iran somewhere.
Yeah, just
I
tell us.
promise.
Al-Shabaab is
I
wide.
promise.
They
okay.
have support.
Okay, how I look at it is that a terror group is like, okay, a terror group is like a fish, and the water are the people.
Yeah.
Without water, a fish cannot survive. I think that there are factions of the community in Somalia who are actually
not the
against.
same case for ADF. That maybe there are people in Uganda who have had some factions, some small clans which support the ADF. There are those rumors, but because there are those who support it, does it mean that that we should not fight it? Its existence.
Okay, well, let's just bring it back to our context. And Wilson, I had asked you earlier on, is that from the broader perspective, Somalia joining the EAC, now it means that the conflict in Somalia becomes our obligation as member states, all right? So it means that our intervention in Somalia won't be from a point of humanitarian action, but we are now obliged because there is the EAC treaty involved. So are we, because if you look at the process through which Somalia is joining the EAC, it is quite quick. Do you think that the member states in EAC are trying to find a legitimate reason to have presence in Somalia? Because if Somalia is part of the EAC, then our presence there becomes more legitimate. So do you think that there could be certain political connotations underlying Somalia joining EAC?
Absolutely, because I don't think we are being so much hospitable that we were coming with these countries.
True.
Somalia joining EAC, I don't think it is on a legitimate cause.
But Ubuntu, I mean.
Yeah, like you've said, of course, when Somalia subscribes to the East African community, then its war becomes our. We have to support them and fight. But then now, the another question should be: are we even ready to fight for? Because we already have DRC here. We have totally failed there.
South Sudan.
South Sudan, very good, yes. I really don't think, because you saw what happened in DRC. I think we are still paying a debt, and we shall pay it. I think for, is it for how many years? Because every 9th of September we pay, is it $9 million? Because of the people that stole from the DRC in this guise of going there to keep peace. So I think this is not, now this shouldn't be the reason that we go to Somalia to keep peace. Because Somalia joining EAC will not stop its war. It will not. Because what haven't we done? Still, our army is in Somalia. We are saying it. Just that the difference would be Somalia will become a member of EAC, and then, like you said, we shall have a legitimate cause. Even if other forces are withdrawing, ours might stay. So that is it. Like you said, then we are going political. I don't think it's for the cause of peace, because we have seen it in DRC, we've seen it in South Sudan, and we have totally failed there. Instead of keeping peace, we have rooted. So this is the same case with Somalia. That's why I'm saying that as EAC, we are not in a better position to receive Somalia, a war-torn country now joining EAC. We are not in a better position to bring it to order. So let it first stay independent as it is, with the draft forces. As you are saying, if it is well capacitated that it can fight the Al-Shabaab, it first neutralizes the war, and then maybe it can join the EAC. But I don't think it is for a legitimate cause. To give you a direct answer. So,
Nancy, Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Somalia.
Jihad.
All these terror groups, and you recall the famous 9/11 that led to the war on terror and etc. I don't know, has the globe failed to deal with transnational terrorism? Because it appears like these terror groups continue to become more sophisticated and are becoming more difficult for the international community to be able to trace how they operate, and the violence just cannot stop. So what do you think would be a viable solution for transnational terrorism?
You mentioned
Is it in intelligence? Is it in
you
military?
you mentioned mostly religious terror groups.
Mm,
So you see, that's what do they have in common?
mm,
Jihad, Boko Haram, Al Qaeda, Al Shabaab, all these people.
mm,
In most cases, most of these terror groups are first of all Muslims. That's where we should start from. So that means our approach again is Hezbollah in Lebanon.
mm,
We have Hamas. So you see, most of these terror groups are Muslims, and then I think that's where we should. That's the direction we should take. We should again go religious. For me, that's what I believe really, because again, in most cases, it's a mindset issue. It's a lot. There's a lot of indoctrination that happens, especially in most of these terror groups. Believing that they are superior. Everyone has to be the certain religion. Everyone has to dress a certain have certain beliefs all over the world. So it's more complex than just small.
So we should break down the software and not it isn't enough to break down their hardware of their military bases and all that. We should be able to reverse engineer their orientation and their ideology,
because they are indoctrinated. For them, in their minds, they have to live a certain, and everyone else around them has to live a certain way, and they are willing to do anything to achieve that. Whether they slaughter people, for them they don't really care. As long as this person doesn't have the same beliefs as them, they don't really care. So again, I think we have to go back to mindset change. And it's going to be it's slow, it's complex, I don't know how we're going to go about it.
It will take
but
time,
it will take a really, really long time. So most of these terror groups, I think we should focus on going back to their beliefs, maybe having debates about their beliefs, whether they're actually right or not, first of all. Just making them understand that everyone doesn't have to be like you, but you can actually coexist with different other people with different beliefs and all this. Because that's the whole point. But all the wars that they have all over the world, it's about...
Okay, but ask yourself, how do these terror groups get all the weapons that they have? Who sells to them these weapons? Because they have sophisticated weapons.
Exactly.
Where do they get them from?
The superpowers, Iran.
So that's why I'm saying that we cannot look at them from just the point of, oh no, these are... I think they have very strong backing from certain superpowers.
Of course, that's what I'm saying, Kidega. At a personal level, if you have a mindset change towards something, doesn't matter if a superpower comes to you and tells you, let's do this, we'll give you this and this. As long as you don't believe in that anymore, then you're not going to engage, right? But if they come to you and approach you and then tell you about all these things, all these beliefs, and then of course, you can easily be swayed away, right? So again, I think it has to go a bit more personal, a bit more rooted from the ground. Of course, we are dealing with we want to talk about superpowers and all this, but these people have people that go to the ground and recruit people. You get preach, indoctrinate. We have schools that are teaching these things. So you see, we cannot deal with it from the top. It has to be a more bottom-up approach. Yes.
Lawel, is it about time we declared another war on terror?
Where we have... I don't know if we need to declare
Guantanamo Bay, Abu Ghraib.
The war is ongoing. The war is ongoing.
So, I mean, the issue of terrorism, because these are, terrorist groups that are causing all this insecurity in Somalia, in DRC. So, how can we deal with terrorism once and for all?
It's a very sensitive discussion that I'm not sure people are willing to have. When she says that there is something wrong with the Muslim doctrine, I don't think like many other people, she dislikes Muslims. She actually likes them at individual level. But there is a recognition that there must be something problematic about the doctrine itself.
The doctrine.
And that it cannot be a coincidence that most of the terror groups believe that everyone should live according to a particular religious doctrine. And that's a discussion we are not willing to have. There used to be a time when there was this kind of radical, even in Christianity, the Crusaders and whatnot. But the population, especially in the West, were able to fight against that position of the church. Even the French Revolution was a protest against the church capturing the state. And I think that largely the Middle East, the individuals have not been able to overpower the position of religion individualized. And that's why everyone has to live according to a particular doctrine. They think that everyone in the world should live according to it, and they want to impose it on everyone else. And I think for me, the solution is some level of boldness, people to discuss it. There is a challenge. And because of, for all of us have to be politically correct, no one wants to say that there's a problem with this doctrine.
Yeah.
And just to clear the air, I don't think that if someone says there's a problem with a doctrine, they mean that there's a problem with the people. All of us relate with individuals. All of them are good people. The problem, there must be a problem. Because the argument that terrorism exists because people have been oppressed, the truth is that every part of the world at some point has been oppressed. Like no one has been more oppressed than Africans, by the way. There must be a reason why, at some point, terrorism, even at a larger scale, believes in a particular ideology. And why it always boils down to that. If you look at Nigeria, there have been all sorts of wars in all parts of Nigeria,
between the Biafra
and all that. But there's something about the northern part that is occupied. So we must have that, because we must deconstruct that doctrine. Yeah.
Well, colleagues, just in a minute each, our last words regarding, Somalia, it has a serious security dilemma. Now, the people who we thought have been trying to stabilize are now leaving. So the question is Somalia ready to take over? It's the burden of insecurity. So I'll begin with you, Wilson, as I move towards Lawel, just in a minute.
Conclusively, Somalia, I guess now it is ready, and it should be given time. As it said, let the ATMIS pull out. Let us give Somalia time to go back to the drawing board and realize their own issues and try to solve them. We can continue supporting them, not supplying them with officers and what. There are some other ways we can support them, not actually being on ground. We can support from the outside. But for now, let us give Somalia time to reconstruct itself and solve its own issues without involving ATMIS.
Okay, Nancy.
Thank you. And I'll start with whether or not Somalia is ready to join the EAC. I will side with Wilson. I don't think the East African community is ready to take on another politically unstable state. We already have quite a number. Yeah. So I do not think we can take on another one just yet. And in regard to whether or not Somalia is actually ready to take charge of its affairs, I had no idea that Somalia had requested for more time. So that would, of course, show that they are not ready to stand on their own. And I think if we can, maybe we should stick a little bit more to be sure that when we move away, they're actually able to stand on their own. Right? Yeah. So I think basically that's it. But also, I still believe that if there is a way we can, even if we are able to move away and they say they are ready, they are. I think there should still be a way we can capacitate them and empower them, because I don't think they can still be able to deal with Al-Shabaab alone for quite some time. So if there's a way we can do it without necessarily being physically present there, so I think we should probably do that when we step out. Yeah.
Me as a citizen, I think that most of our opinions or our positions on EAC as citizens of East Africa don't matter. The setup of, even the legal setup of East Africa, that gives a lot of power, decision making, to the heads of states. On everyday basis, even our parliament, it is not something we live. It's not something we debate. It's not within our means. And so for me, being in Congo, it's not I don't find it as something of national interest. Of national interest. Like, it's their thing, and
But it's your taxes.
we can only celebrate. Of course, there are always, how do they call them? There are some benefits that come, such as the economic ones. That if it's part of EAC, you can always freely trade and all that. But if you want to discuss it as a citizen of East Africa, our input doesn't matter really. Like I've said, I don't live as an East African. I don't feel it. Even if I did, our position as Ugandans is never discussed. It's not like how you see EU, where the parliament debates it and there's a hot position and everyone living within those countries is touched. No, it's not. You have Museveni speaks to the president of Somalia or DRC Congo, they have a good rapport, they come together. Like I said, the legal setup of EAC gives all the decision-making power to the heads of states. You know for sure that even if IALA agrees on something, it is subject to the 5 or 7, 6 presidents sitting. If Kagame or any individual president doesn't approve of it, it doesn't exist. So for me, East Africa, it's not something that I want to lose my sleep
over.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lawel. Thank you very much, Nancy and Wilson, for your time. And of course, the viewers, it's always a pleasure having you every Wednesday afternoon. I don't want to add anything to what has been discussed and said, but rather just wish you a happy afternoon. And to our senior fours who are doing their exams, success. And see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.